Good morning. Welcome to this morning's service. I hope everybody's staying warm and dry. We'll begin this morning's service with the reading of Sambujo and Junirai. So if you please join us in the reading of Junirai. Will you please join now in the reading of the Golden Chain? I am a link in Amida's golden chain of love that stretches around the world. I will keep my link bright and strong. I will be kind and gentle to every living thing and protect all who are weaker than myself. I will think pure and beautiful thoughts, say pure and beautiful words, and do pure and beautiful deeds. May every link in Amida's golden chain of love be bright and strong, and may we all attain perfect peace. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda. Namanda. Good morning. Once again, good to be with all of you, even though it is across on the internet. We don't know where this signal is going. I mean, we see it start here and end up on your screen somewhere, but then the beam goes, who knows? I have no idea. It bounces off a satellite, probably somewhere before it arrives where you are. And here we are. You know, I'm talking to you. Hopefully you're able to see me and hear my voice. And I'm able to communicate with you and share with you some of my ideas or some of my thoughts. And you're able to receive that. Even though you're not in the same room as me, as you know, it would be nice that if you could be in the same room and I could see your face as I'm speaking. But because of the circumstances that we're under, I can't see you. And I have to trust that there is actually someone out there. You are out there, right? I mean, there's no way for me to know whether you are watching, or even if you have your screens on, your video on, and you're watching. Most Sunday mornings I have a Sangha scout class, and I try to encourage the scouts to leave their video on so I can see their faces, and but sometimes their video's not working, or their mics aren't working, or sometimes they just don't want to be seen on screen, and I can understand that. But it's easier, it's easier for me if I can see someone's face as I'm speaking. But yet, even if we can't see each other, right? We're not in the same space, we're not in the same room, I have to believe that there is someone there who is out there that I'm actually speaking to. We're not able to, I mean, we can confirm that, I suppose, by going through some kind of test to see if you're actually there or not. But whether we test or not, I trust in that you're there. And you're trusting that you're not seeing, how do you know? Maybe you're seeing a recording of me this morning. But actually, it's not, well, if you view this video a day or two from now, it will be a recording. But right now, at this moment, Sunday morning at 10 to 10, you're actually watching. Is it? Can I say that you're watching me live? You're watching me live. I'm here speaking to you. But it's a trust, right, that has to take place. That you're actually seeing me speaking to you. And I trust that you're there hearing what I have to say. Whether I am actually here, whether you are actually there, it is the trust between us, between you and me, that allows me to speak to you. Daniel once said, doesn't matter if no one's in the hondo, who'll give a Dharma message anyway. to the mosquitoes that might be in the hondo. I don't have quite that dedication of Daniel to be able to speak to the mosquitoes. But I trust that someone is there hearing what I might have to share. We don't have to actually kind of confirm that this person or this thing or this, what I'm looking at, needs to be there. The trust that we share allows us to listen carefully to what's being expressed. In the same way, similarly, I should say similarly, not in the same way, but similarly, our trust in Amida Buddha, vow of Amida Buddha, there's no way to kind of test and say, oh, this is what it is, right? This is Amida Buddha, or this is Amida Buddha's vow. We have an understanding of what all of these things are. And then when it finally comes down to it, we trust that that is actually there. That we can, from all of the teachers that have shared their appreciation and all of the experiences that are wrapped up in Jodo Shinshu, we're able to trust in this which we've heard, that the vow of Amida Buddha is for all beings, for everyone. That through Amida Buddha, we can simply say, Namo Amida Butsu, and that we too, that I am able to enjoy that same sense of relief, same sense of assurance that the vow of Amida Buddha moves me to the experience of enlightenment. We don't have to know or verify or say, yeah, there's Amida Buddha. I can point to him and say, there's Amida Buddha. But because I listen with my heart and with my mind, I listen to the teachings that have come down over the years, that I can trust in that Namo Amida Butsu. That Namo Amida Butsu affirms and assures me, as I am, of the eventual resolution of the difficulties that I cause and experience. Sometimes our minds will question, have so many questions, and those questions sometimes help us to get a better understanding, but sometimes those questions kind of get in the way of where we want to be. And sometimes all we need to do is simply say, Namo Amida Butsu, and trust in the vow of Amida Buddha. As we continue, in this pandemic, we think about, I think about these things, how we're able to communicate, how we're able to share the teachings of the Buddha, what it might mean in these under these new circumstances. Well, now kind of getting old. It's been 2 years now that we've been doing this, but becoming at the same time familiar with what we've been doing. Finding that even in this time, when you're not in the hondo, when we've been talking to an empty hondo for 2 years, that we might still be able to communicate with one another, to experience what we share with one another. Even if I can't see you, you're seeing me, but I can't see you, and be able to communicate and to share, to express what is important, to receive what is important. As these circumstances we find ourselves in, provides us opportunities to think about what we've been learning, to maybe reshape, reorient the way that we see things. And after all, that's what Shakyamuni Buddha is asking us to do, to kind of rethink the way that we see the world, to maybe not so much question, but to understand that there is perhaps another way to see and experience the world. Thank you very much for being a part of this morning's Dharma School service. Next week, we continue with our regular morning schedule, but then these next 2 weeks, this week and next week, will be the last two regular Sunday services in the year 2021. We hope that you will continue to participate in these services, that you're well, that you stay dry, and stay warm. Thank you very much, everyone. If you please join in Gassho and Sanbutsuge, we'll conclude this morning's service. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda. Thank you, everyone. See you in class. Good morning. Welcome to this morning service. A few weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago, we started wearing these plastic shields, and with a regular mask, it was difficult to do sutra chanting. In normal conversation or normal kind of activities, a cloth mask it was possible to use a cloth mask. I mean, that's what we do every day. But during sutra chanting, you have to continually have this kind of a deep breathing, and when you exhale, I think my theory is, I think some of the carbon dioxide was getting caught or trapped in the cloth mask, so that when you inhale again, you're pulling some of that back in, and you're not getting a full breath. But in any case, Larry Honda, I guess, was saying that you sound like an old man. So I thought, because I was experiencing this, I thought maybe there might be a better way to do this. And rather than kind of just take off our mask and doing services, we decided that we'd try these masks, and it has been working. I didn't know until I spoke to Mikame Sensei about my experiences that Mikame Sensei was going through the same thing, that she was having difficulties with trying to do sutra chanting. And so it's been a real benefit to be able to use these masks. The trouble with masks as a whole is when your nose gets itchy, you can't rub your nose. And if you when you're wearing a mask, you can yawn at any time that you want to. I mean, nobody can see you yawning, but with this mask, if you are suddenly taken over by a sudden yawn, you have to be careful where you are and what you're doing, so that you're not yawning in somebody's face unexpectedly. But we're here this morning. Thank you for joining us. We'll begin this service with the reading of Sanbutsuge, and if you please join in the reading of Sambujo.
線の不満無料内緒中尿後弱用一切知と書物不入具の検証逆非尿無弱証文線外部不可下無修線の公明師匠変死小国女性精進異人男女両が三仏国の内一語宗奇妙道場上説目女内音義務の尊学校愛民ドーナツ一歳児往来所新年少女伊藤が目計学安の法仏神妙善が心象発願の意力少々欲人望生存知恵無下上領子孫真が信用計量心志諸無の空中万行精進臨終下アマナムアマナムアマナムアマナムナ
This morning, our Dharma message will be presented by Michael Jones. Michael, お願いします。
Thank you, Sensei. Please join me in the three treasures. Hard is it to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings of the Blessed One. Now we hear it. If we do not realize the truth in this life, when will it be realized? Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we absorb ourselves in the principle of the way to enlightenment and awaken in ourselves the supreme will. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we be submerged in the depths of the doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we live in harmony in the great assembly as disciples of Buddha and be freed from all hindrances, becoming units of true accord in the life of harmony in a spirit of universal oneness, freed from the bondage of selfishness. Even through myriads ages of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of Tathagata's teaching. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo. Good morning. Thank you all for joining us this morning. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you this morning. So before I begin, please join me in Gassho. The name embodying the primal vow is the act of true settlement. The vow of entrusting with sincere mind is the cause of birth. We realize the equal of enlightenment and supreme nirvana through fulfillment of the vow of necessarily attaining nirvana. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo. Well, this weekend, the BWA's Bonin Kai was originally planned to be held, and unfortunately, due to the continuing pandemic, the event had to be canceled. However, it has provided me the opportunity to talk to you about women who have made an impact on Jodo Shinshu and the Honganji. Most of us are familiar with the BWA's Bonin Kai, or year-end party. But I looked up the word Bonin Kai just to make sure that I was not making any wrong assumptions about the meaning. Bonin Kai consists of three kanji characters. The second and the third are fairly straightforward. The second, nen, means year. The last character, kai, means association, meeting, or party. The first character is what held the surprise for me. It means forget. Bo is the Chinese reading, and wasuderu would be the Japanese reading. Therefore, the Bonin Kai really is the forget the year party. Interesting. While I could understand anyone wanting to forget this year, or last year for that matter, there's actually a lot I want to remember. For our family, a new grandson arrived on the scene at the beginning of this year. And given all that the BWA, or Buddhist Women's Association, does for us, I don't want to forget about them either. This organization impacts the Nishi Honganji on a global basis. In fact, they're in the midst of planning their next worldwide conference to be held in Kyoto in 2023. Today, however, I want to talk about three women who, to my mind, helped to build the Honganji. Three women without whose dedication, love, commitment, and vision there would be, in my opinion, no Honganji, Nishi or Higashi, and possibly no Jodo Shinshu. Two of these women should be very familiar to you, but I hope to give you a slightly different view of their contribution. The third, while you may have heard about, you may not have thought about her impact on Honganji as we know it. In fact, we don't even know her name. So who are these three women? As I said, you'll likely know the first two, Eshini and Kakushini. The third is Renyo's mother. She is a mysterious figure about whom little is known. So how did these three make such a significant impact? Let's start with Eshini. As you're likely aware, Eshini was the wife of Shinran. There is unfortunately little information about her life. By most accounts, her family had some access to resources, and she was associated in some fashion with an imperial regent named Kujo Kanazane. Kujo was also a follower of Honen's teachings. It is possible that Eshini met Shinran while serving in some capacity with the Kujo family in Kyoto. After he was exiled to Ichigo, Shinran and Eshini had 6 children, and because Eshini's family had property in this area, life was a little easier, and her support of him and their children allowed him to focus on his propagation in the Kanto region. After 20 years in the Kanto region, the family moved to Kyoto. And 22 years later, Eshini took 3 of their children and moved back to Etsuko to look after properties left her by her family. Now I realize I'm skipping a lot of years, and that's primarily because we only have so much time here, and I want to stick to the important parts of how Eshini's contributions led to this. So after Eshini went back to Etsuko, this left Shinran in Kyoto, supported by donations from Kanto followers, local relatives, and their youngest daughter, Kakushini. The fact that Eshini moved herself and 3 children from Kyoto allowed Shinran to complete his masterwork, the Kyogyo Shinsho, with 4 fewer mouths to feed. Her support over all those years allowed Shinran the time and flexibility to focus on his reading, propagation, and eventually his writing. These writings became the basis of the doctrine of the Jodo Shinshu as we know it today. But there was one more act performed by Eshini that had an impact. Upon Shinran's death, their daughter Kakushini was distressed that she saw no outward signs that Shinran had entered the Pure Land, and she wrote to Eshini. Eshini replied, assuring Kakushini that not only had he entered the Pure Land, but that she had previously had a vision of Shinran as the Bodhisattva of Avalokitesvara. In fact, it was the discovery of several of Eshini's letters at the Nishihonguanji in 1921 that confirmed that Shinran actually existed. There had been some speculation that he was actually a composite of several figures and not an actual single individual. Eshini's dedication and support of Shinran allowed him the freedom to form his doctrine and document it in his letters and the Kyogyo Shinsho. So if we consider Shinran as the founder, it's logical to consider Eshini the first lady of the Jodo Shinshu. The youngest daughter of Shinran and Eshini also holds a special place in the history of Honganji. In addition to the fact that she helped care for her father in Kyoto after Eshini went back to Etsuko, she also played a role in establishing what became the Honganji. Kakushini was married twice. By her first husband, she had a son, later known as Kakue. After her first husband died, and 3 years after her father's death, Kakushini married again and married Onomiya Zennen, who owned property in Kyoto. They had children, one of whom was a son named Yui Zen. Kakushini's dedication to her father led her to establish a grave site chapel dedicated to Shinran. That dedication, remember, was reinforced when Eshini wrote to Kakushini assuring her that her father had gone to the Pure Land. When Kakushini's second husband died, he deeded the land on which the grave and chapel sat to Kakushini. She had thus become the guardian of Shinran's remains and of the chapel in which they were housed. People came to the chapel to pay their respects to Shinran, and the site became a focal point for the legacy of Shinran. She acted as caretaker to the chapel and land, and in a role that later became known as the Rusushiki. The drama of the origin of Honganji really begins in the year Kakushini's death, 1283. During that year, she appointed Kakue, her first son from her first marriage, as her successor to care for the gravesite and chapel. Upon her death, her will stipulated that in addition to Kakue being appointed as the caretaker, the property rights were given to the Kanto followers who had donated to the building of the chapel and the costs of keeping it up. And she specified that her descendants were to be appointed to look after the site. This transition apparently happened without much controversy. But when Kakue later designated his son, Kakunyo, as his successor in the role of caretaker, there was an issue. Yui Zen, Kakushini's son from her second marriage, wanted the role as well. After some legal discussions and petition to the followers in Kanto, Kakunyo was eventually appointed to the caretaker. And for those of you who know the story here, there's a lot more to that story than I've covered here, but it's quite an interesting story. But in the end, Kakunyo became the next caretaker. Kakunyo would go on to transform the memorial site into a formally recognized Buddhist temple, eventually settling on the name Honganji, or Temple of the Primal Vow. But he didn't stop there. In his petitioning, he connected Shinran's name to the temple, referring to it as Honganji Shinran Shonin. By providing this link, Kakunyo wanted to establish the Honganji as Shinran's legitimate authority among Shinshu followers. Kakunyo would go on to establish the Honganji as an independent organization, recognized temple, and thanks to his grandmother, Kakushini, there was a bloodline lineage leadership process that ensured Shinran's legacy. The efforts of Kakushini had long-term impacts on the Buddhist world, first in Japan, but the legacy of what she started can be seen now in countries around the world. Her devotion to Shinran and insights into the importance of a doctrinal and bloodline successor to Shinran led to the Buddhist historian James Dobbin to call her the de facto founder of Honganji, one of Japan's most important and influential temples in later centuries. I would simply refer to her as the mother of the Honganji. Skipping a few generations now, we have another influential woman, and yet one we know next to nothing about. This unknown woman was the mother of Renyo, the 8th Monshu and so-called second founder of the Honganji. She was likely a servant in the household of Renyo's father, Zonyo, and after giving birth to him, she raised Renyo for the first 5 or 6 years. At that point, Zonyo married his first wife, Nyoen, forcing Renyo's mother to leave the area. Before she left, she pleaded with Renyo to reestablish Shinran's teachings during his lifetime. The plea had a profound effect on Renyo. At the age of 15, he vowed to restore the teachings of Shinran and to make the teachings known throughout Japan. Renyo would search for clues to his mother's whereabouts for years to come, but to no avail. I would also assert that the impact of Renyo's stepmother, Nyoen, was significant as well, but this would be an example of a negative impact encouraging a positive result. Nyoen's disdain for Renyo, favoring her own son, Ogen, led to a debate as to who should take over as Monshu following the passing of Zonyo. Had this dispute not resolved in Renyo's favor, Ogen would have been the 8th Monshu. With the Honganji in disarray, Renyo's efforts resulted in a newly strengthened and focused organization. Would Ogen have been able to turn things around to this degree? We'll never really know this for certain, but Renyo's passion and his desire to reestablish the vehicle for Shinran's teachings were apparently fueled by his mother's plea. This is something that Ogen did not possess. These 3 women undeniably altered the course of Jodo Shinshu as a school of Pure Land Buddhism and the Honganji as the organization responsible for its doctrinal evolution and caretaking of its assets. Eshini, our First Lady of Jodo Shinshu, through her dedication to and support of Shinran, her assurances to Kakushini of Shinran's entry into the Pure Land, and her letters which validated that Shinran was a real person, helped to set the stage for Jodo Shinshu and for Shinran as the founder. Kakushini, the mother of Honganji, cared for Shinran in his final years, established the grave site and the chapel to house his remains. She also acquired the land on which it sat and established the role of Rishiki, which eventually became transformed into the role of Monshu. Finally, she left us with a bloodline succession process which has ensured the faithful transmission of Shinran's teachings through the generations. The Honganji that she founded is what led to the Nishi Honganji, to which we all belong. Finally, the unnamed but remembered mother of Renyo. The mother's wish that her son reestablish Shinran's teachings for the benefits of all led to Renyo's lifelong quest to the rebirth of the Honganji. So on this weekend, when our Buddhist Women's Association was to celebrate their Bonenkai, let us show our gratitude to the women of the BWA, and let us particularly be grateful for the vision and dedication of these 3 women who built the Honganji. Without their devotion to Shinran, we might never have come together. Please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Michael. Once again, a very informative but interesting as well part of our history of Jodo Shinshu and key moments in our history. The reference to Renyo's mother, so little is known about her except that wish that she conveyed to Renyo. And I hadn't really thought about it before, but it kind of drove Renyo to do what he was able to accomplish in his lifetime. Very, very interesting. Thank you very much for that. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for this morning's service. Next week, the 19th, is a regular service, but the following week, of course, we have that Christmas weekend that will be closed for that weekend. But please join us for next week's service on the 19th, and then following that would be the New Year's Eve service, and then followed by the New Year's Day service. So please, thank you very much. Stay safe, everyone. And as we close, will you please join in Gassho and then Betsuin. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you very much, everyone. See you next week. Stay safe. Following this morning's service, however, at 11 o'clock, we have a once-a-month Japanese language service, and Mikame Sensei is prepared to have that, conduct that service. So 11 o'clock, please join us, or let others know to join us for this once-a-month Japanese language service. Thank you very much, everybody. See you next time.
はようございます。三ノ瀬別院の日曜日朝のお勤めにご参加くださいましてありがとうございます。私は僧侶の三亀と申します。12月ですね、今年2021年最後の、月々の、お勤めとなります。月に一度第2日曜日にこうして11時頃から、配信をさせていただいているんですけれども、今日で3回目のお勤めになります。また、来年もね、1月も同じように第2日曜日の11時からね、放送をねさせていただく予定となっておりますので、またね、来年もねよろしくお願いいたします。今日のお勤めですけれども、まず最初に、お経は三部条、そしてじゅうせいげというお勤めをねお勤めさせていただきます。その後、少し仏様のお話、ご法話をねさせていただきます。もし、お手元に、こういう、お経本ねあるようでしたら、お経本ねじゅうせいげと、三仏げね、もし、ご覧に、なれるようでしたらご覧ください。あとは、YouTube とあと、ウェブサイトにですね、このお経の、文字がね5文が書いてあるところがありますので、そちらでも、チェックしていただくことができます。もしよろしかったらご一緒にお勤めください。 ありがとうございます。そうしましたらご一緒に三帰依文というね、ご文章を読んでいきたいと思います。ご問は、画面に表示されますので、どうぞご一緒にご唱和ください。合唱お願いいたします。人参受けがたし、今すでに受く。仏法聞きがたし、今すでに聞く。好み根性に向かってどせずんば、さらにいずれの章に向かってか、好みをどせん。大種もろともに、指針に参謀に帰依し立てまつるべし。自ら仏に帰依し立てまつる。まさに願わくは、主情とともに、大道を大義して、無常意を起こさん。自ら法に帰依し立てまつる。まさに願わくは主情とともに、深く胸像に入りて知恵海のごとくならん。自ら僧に帰依し立てまつる。まさに願わくは主情とともに、大種を通りして一切無下ならん。無常人人未明の方は百千万号にも愛多ことかたし。我今検問し授事することを得たり。願わくは如来の真実義を決し立てまつらん。ナマンダー仏ナマンダー仏ナマンダー仏。はい、ありがとうございました。そうしましたらね、少しばかりお話をさせていただきたいと思うんですけれども、私ここ三ノ瀬のお寺にいますけれども、三ノ瀬別院というところで仲裁所のですね、お仕事をさせて、勤めさせていただいているんですけれども、お寺にいますとありがたいことにお供えでね、いろいろこうフルーツをお供えされたのをお下がりでねいただいたり、メンバーの方、ね、ご門徒さんの方々が、うちで採れた野菜ですよとかね、果物ですと言ってね、私たち僧侶に、くださることもあるんですね。で今年はたくさん柿をいただきました。はい、日本ではね当たり前のように柿いただいてきたんですけれども、アメリカに来て、柿をいただける、こんなにいただけるとはっていうふうにねびっくりしております。またびっくりすることはですね、その柿というのはこの日系アメリカ人の方のお家では皆さん大体お家に柿の木があるんだそうです、ね、すごいですよね。この間そのお友達のお一人にね、仲良くさせていただいている方がいるんですけれども、その方のお家にねたくさん柿がなったから、それを取るお手伝いをしてほしいということでね、お手伝いに行きまして、もう私はもう取ってあるものをね磨いていく、そういうお仕事をさせて、お手伝いをねさせていただきました、ね、ただ取って、終わりじゃなくて、取って磨いたらですね、すごい艶が出て本当にね美味しそうになりました、ね、その一苦労一手間がすごいありがたいなと思いました。そしてね、その柿の木っていうのはですね、皆さんバックヤード、裏庭にあるんですよっていうふうに言ってました。なんでかというと、表にあるとこう鳥だったりリスが来るから、ね、裏庭にあるんですよっていうふうにねおっしゃってました。リスが来るんだって。私リスをね日本で見たことなかった。このアメリカに来てね、普通にこう道路をリスが通ってるのを見てねびっくりしたもんですから、そうか、リスが取りに来るんだなと思ってね、また違うんだなと思いました。私が生まれ育ちました日本の島根県、本当に自然豊かで本当森に囲まれたとこなんですけども、島根県で柿は猿が取りに来るんですね。はい、猿やらカラスが取りに来るので、アメリカとは違って猿とのこう取り合いなので早く取ってしまおうっていうふうにね、思っているわけです。こんなふうに島根県、この私が生まれ育ったところでは人よりもですね、どっちかっていうと野生動物の方が 多いんじゃないかなっていうぐらいいろんな動物とねこの森の中で、共生して生きていかないといけない、そういうところでありました。ですから、ね、例えばイノシシが出たりとか、ね、タヌキが出たりとかキツネだったり、そして時にはクマも出たりしました。そして、ね、もちろん、ね、お猿さんも出ました。ですからどういうふうにその野生動物がこう暮らしていて、何がタブーなのか、やっちゃいけないことなのかっていうのは一緒にね、自然の中に住んでる人間たちも理解しないといけないということでね、特別なことだと思うんですけれども、私が通っていた小学校では野生動物出会った時どんなふうにこう対応したらいいかっていうのを学ぶ勉強会みたいなのがねありました。例えばクマに出会った時どうしたらいいと思いますか、ねこのサンノゼではね、アメリカではお会いすることはないかもしれないですけれどもね、クマに会ったら、ね、クマというのは人の、ね、声だったりそういうのを人を避けたいですから、まず、ね、カバンに鈴をつけて登下校しました。そしてよくね死んだふりをした方がいいっていうふうに言いますけども、死んだふりしない方がいいそうです。死んだふりじゃなくてクマが来たら後ろにゆっくりと下がっていくっていうのがいいそうです。はい、そして先ほども言いましたお猿さん、ね、よく出てました。お猿さんに出会ったらどうするかっていうとね、普通のお猿さんと違います。動物園ってね、いるようなこう人に慣れたお猿さんだったらいいんですけれども、野生のお猿さんだとね全然違う、全く違うわけなんですね。ですからどうすればいいかというと、まず可愛いからといって餌はあげちゃダメですね。はい、そしてね、可愛いからおいでっていうふうにやっちゃいけません。近づいてもダメ、ね、そしてもちろん目は見ちゃダメだよっていうふうに言われました、ね、目を見てはダメ。なんでかっていうとお猿さんが野生で生きている暮らしているお猿さんは目を合わせると自分に攻撃しているというふうにね思って逆に襲ってくる可能性があるから絶対目を合わせちゃダメだよ、ね、これをね抑えて、山に行っていただければと思うんですけれどもね、私は小さい頃この目を見ちゃダメだよって言われた時ね、お猿さんと目が合わせられないのなんか寂しいなって思ったんですけども、でもねこれはどちらがねこう人間からしたら目を合わせるっていうのはねコミュニケーションとして信頼関係をこう築く上でとっても大切なことですけども、猿の野生の世界では、タブー、ね、敵同士になってしまう、戦う攻撃の対象になってしまう、ね、どちらが間違っているのかっていうわけではないんです。どちらが合っているのかっていうことではありません。そういう環境の中で生きているために、ね、彼らは目を合わせないっていうふうになっているし、私たちはそうじゃないから目を合わせるようにっていうふうにね育ててもらったからこういう違いが出ているわけなんです。野生で生きることっていうことをね考えてみました。そしたらねやっぱり極端に言うと自分だけが頼りっていうところじゃないかなと思います。きっと生まれてからね、お母さんザルお父さんザルとかいたと思うんですけれども、どっちかっていうと大きくなってくると命がけで生きるために食料だったり縄張りをね、確保しないといけない、守らないといけない。そういう時には家族だったり、ね、仲間だったりと奪い合ったり戦わないといけない、ね、そういう中にあったからこそ、ね、簡単に相手をね信頼しちゃいけないということであんまりというか目を合わせないように、ねしていたのかなっていうふうに思うんですね。一方この人間はどうかっていうとね、生まれた時はね同じだと思います。赤ちゃんで何にもできない、自分で歩くことも、 話すこともできないし、食べることももちろんね、人間はもちろんできないですけれども、そしてもう泣くことぐらいしかね、自分でできなかったと思います。これ同じように私野生に育ちましたけど、野生でね一人ポツンとそういう私を取り残されてたらですね、真っ先に生きていけない、もう攻撃されて死んでしまうようなそういう、存在だったと思うんですけども、その何にもできない私にね、赤ちゃんの私に、大丈夫だよってね、寂しかったら頼ってね、泣いたら私を頼ってね、寂しかったら頼ってねっていうふうにね、繰り返し私の周りの大人だったり家族だったり兄弟だったりね、いろんな人が声をかけてくれて、繰り返しそういう中で育ててもらったから、目を見て相手と話すことっていうことで信頼関係が持てて、相手を頼ってもいいんだなっていうふうにね、育ててもらっているわけだと思うんです。ですからね、こうやって普通にね、人と目を合わせて話すことができるって思うと思いますけど、これはそういうふうに育ててもらわないとそうはなりません、すごいことなんですよね。またこの手を合わせるっていうこともね、人間特有、人間にしかないことです。すごいことじゃないかなと思うんですけれども、私たちは手を合わせるっていうのは仏様の前だったり、そしてお食事をいただくときにいただきます、ごちそうさまと言って作ってくださった方だったり、そのお食事をね、その食材を育ててくださった方、そしてそこで販売してくださった方、いろんな方がね、携わってくれた、そのすべて、そして食料となって私の命をつないでくれるその食べ物に対して全部にお礼を言うために手を合わせます、この合唱、これ合唱って言いますね。手を合わせること、手のひら同士を合わせることを合唱って言いますけれども、この合唱のルーツは仏教のルーツがあるインドから来ています。インドでは、こうやって手のひら同士を合わせて、手のひら同士を合わせると、武器持てませんよね。ですから私はあなたに対して攻撃しませんよっていうことを合わせるための無抵抗の絶対平和の手っていうふうに言われてるんですね。ですからこれを相手を攻撃しませんよ、あなたを大切に思いますよっていうことをこの手で表すことができます。もう一つ、インドではこの右手は仏様の手、そして左手は私っていうふうに考えられています。この手と手が合わさるとき、一つになるときっていうのは仏様だったり神様の願いを聞かせていただく、大事にさせていただくときにこうやって手を合わせさせていただく、そういうふうなルーツがあるインドの作法というか、作法ですね。作法とともに、仏教の教えと一緒に作法も一緒に、インドから東南アジア、そして、中国、朝鮮、そして日本、そういうふうに私のところまで、ここに届いてくださって、今私たちこうやって手を合わさせていただいているわけなんですね。ですから、大事に目の前の人を大切に、できるあなたでいてねっていう願いが込められている。そして仏様の、願いをちゃんと大切に聞けるあなたでいてねっていう願いが込められている合唱であります。でも実際にその合唱をする私はどうかっていうと、いつもありがたいわっていうふうに思っているかというと、恥ずかしながらそうではないんですね。恥ずかしながら合唱しながら別のことを考えていたり不安に思っていることだったり、今考えなくていいことだったり考えてしまう。そしていただきます、ごちそうさまするとき、ちゃんと本当にありがとうと思って、いただきます、ごちそうさまって言ってるかっていうと、お腹が空いてもうそんなことは頭から抜け落ちてしまって食欲を満たすことばっかりのことを 考えてしまっていたり、そしておいしいとかまずいとかね、そういうねことばっかりねケチをつけるようなね私であってね、なんかその願いとは反対側にもしかしたらいるのが私かもしれません。この私たちが生きる世界、でもね、この野生のお猿さんたちのように、こう誰かとこうね、戦いながらね、競争の社会でありますから生きないといけない。ですからね、世間を生きる中ではどっちかっていうと肩肘張ってこう強がって、自分は人より優れているんだ、大きいんだっていうところをね見せようと精一杯生きている私っていうのはどっちかっていうと手が力んでしまっているんじゃないかな。例えばもしかしたらこの手で、そしてもしかしたらこの言葉で誰かを傷つけてしまうような、そんな可能性を秘めているのが私のこの手であります。そして、この生きるっていうのは何かをこうね掴みながら何かを得ようとして、私の欲望を満たそうとかね、そうお金をもっともっとお金持ちになりたいとかね、そういう思いを持ちながら、そして何かをねいろんなつかみながら生きているから、ね、やっぱり力んでしまう、グーの手になってしまうんじゃないかなと思います。でもね、ありがたいことに私たちはどうか手が合わさるあなたでいてねっていうふうに周りの大人たちに願ってもらって、こうして育てていただきました。合唱の手は、ね、仏様と私が一つになる手で、ね、仏様の願いを聞かせてもらう時の手ですよっていうふうに申し上げました。この手がね力む限りではもしかしたら誰かといがみ合わないといけないかもしれないけれども、どうか、ね、お互い大事に思える、拝み合えるあなたでそういう世界を生きてくださいねっていうふうに願ってくださっているのが仏様です。もちろんね、そうは言ってもこうね世間を生きる中ではこう力んでグーになってしまって強くいないといけない私でありますけれども、それに対してダメだというふうに、こうおっしゃるような仏様ではありません。グーにならないと、力んでいないと自分を保てないようなぐらい大変な世の中をね人生を生きている、それぐらい人生は大変だっていうことをねご存知でいてくださいます。ですからね、その私にどうか私の目の前でね私をこう、思う時は力を抜いて、ね、相手をね大事にできるような、そういうあなたでいてくださいねっていうことをね、繰り返し私たちに、ね、教えてくださっているんじゃないかなと思います。せっかく私たちは、ね、目を見て相手を、大事にできるように、信頼できるようにっていうふうに人間としてね、育てていただきました。そしてまたありがたいことにこうやって手をね合わせて相手を拝んでいけるように、そして、育んでくれている全てのことにありがとうって言えるようにということをね願われて、こうして手が合わさっています。ですから時にはね忘れてしまうこともありますけれども、こうして、仏様の前でね座らせていただく中でね、皆さんとね少しずつこう力んでしまっているこの手が、ね、柔らかく氷が溶けるようにね少しずつねこう溶けていって、ちゃんと心も合唱できるような私たちでねありたいなっていうふうに思います。なので繰り返しゆっくりね、そのお心皆さんとお聞かせいただければと思います。ありがとうございました。これで、この三の瀬別院の日曜日の朝のお勤め終わらせていただきますけれども、今年このお勤め最後なんですけれどもね、お寺では12月31日除夜会っていうのをねやっています。今年最後、これが最後になりますね、お勤め夜の7時半から、これは皆さんにこのお寺に来て、お参りしていただくことはねまた今年もできないんですけれども、同じようにYouTube このチャンネルで放送させていただきます。その時に鐘をね ついている様子だったりご覧いただけますし、お勤めをね、今年最後のお勤めご一緒にできればと思います。そして1月1日が首相へといって、年始め2022年初めのお勤めですね。これ10時から同じようにこちらYouTube で配信をさせていただきますので、どうぞ皆さんご一緒にお参りしていただければと思います。はい、それではね、皆さん寒くなってきましたので、どうぞ暖かくして、おかげでなどひかれないように暖かくしてこのホリデーシーズンお過ごしいただければと思います。はい、では皆さんようこそのお参りでした。では合唱で終わらせていただきます。皆さん合唱お願いいたします。ナマンダーブツナンマンダーツナンマンダーツナンマンダー。ありがとうございました。